Hey guys, Joe here, the man who thinks Atom Smasher should have been around more, and I'm here to talk about UFC Fight Night, Pavlovich versus Blaydes. It was an odd card, like really weird card. Disappointing for me, because I wanted to see Ricky Simone and Song Yadong, but whatever. I had a late start to my day, so I actually only caught like the last two fights, and I had to rewatch the rest like later on. But enough talk. Let's just get to the fights. Main event, Sergei Pavlovich, Curtis Blaydes, heavyweight fight with title implications. Pavlovich, he was an alternate for Jon Jones earlier in the year, or Jon Jones, Cyril Gane, earlier in the year, and he has a ton of power. He has pretty decent boxing. It's decent in like MMA, but like it's really good at heavyweight because skill at heavyweight, it's kind of hard to come by. It's more of a if you have, it's weird. You guys know what I'm talking about. But in theory, he could pose a lot of problems to a lot of guys in the division. Curtis Blaydes, he has a pretty interesting matchup with Jon Jones, I think. He has really good defensive wrestling, because he is a wrestler. He can contest the wrestling aspect of Jon Jones, and his hands are good enough that, they can help win him rounds or win him moments that he can get his wrestling going. So I think that's a really interesting matchup, But so out the gate, we see these big boys just kind of launching shots at each other. I thought Blaydes was having the advantage early. He was kind of taking advantage of Pavlovich's lack of head movement. He was able to just kind of land some good shots here and there. He had really good success with a check left hook. And while it was landing, Pavlovich made the adjustment, ducked his head, came over the top with a overhand right over the check left hook, and had a big bomb, drops Blaydes momentarily, and from there, you can just see that momentum. There was a little meter for momentum. It's here it is in Blaydes, it goes right to Pavlovich, and he was just kind of hurting him over and over and over, just kind of putting the pressure on it. It felt like Blaydes could go out at any point, no, he survived for a while. He tried his lone takedown while he was hurt, and I'm going to talk about that later, but it irked me, He didn't get the takedown. Eventually, the shots were just adding up. Even the step-in jabs of Pavlovich were doing a really good job. And then an uppercut into a flurry with only one shot, really landing in the flurry after the uppercut. I think it was a left hook. And, but Blaydes hits the canvas, some follow-up punches, and call it a night. And, the Russian gets a stoppage win on the first round. There you go. So I have some theories of why Blaydes didn't go for a takedown when he was fresh and not rocked and hurt. First is I think he was having success on the feet. And you hear all the time wrestlers kind of fall in love with their hands. I think this is definitely a case where that potentially have happened. Curtis Blaydes' last two fights, if I remember right, is Tom Aspinall and Dawkins. And he knocked out Dawkins in the first round. With his hands, and he was standing up and striking with Aspinall, doing pretty well up until the leg break for 18, 20 seconds in or whatever, how long it was. Well, not a very long time, but you can kind of understand, when he's having success here against this other heavyweight striker, he's like, oh, I don't need to shoot a takedown. So there's that. The other theory is Pavlovich, almost said Spivak, two Sergeys, but Pavlovich was tossing uppercuts from long distance early on. Now, the uppercut is not a good strike to throw at a distance when you're just kind of leaping in with it. Not very good, but it was making Blaydes hesitant to kind of change levels and duck in. This is how Derek Lewis knocked him out. Derek Lewis just threw an uppercut as, as Blaydes, changed levels and ran headfirst into an uppercut. So, makes sense that could have warded him off from trying to change levels, but who knows? I thought it kind of irked me. I thought he was going to just kind of ground Pavlovich and kind of go from there. But I thought that was the clear path of victory for him. There you go. That's not how fights play out, I guess. So what's next for both guys? Well, I say we give Pavlovich a title shot. I know the UFC really wants to do Stipe Jon Jones. They really like the idea of that. I don't like that idea at all because I don't like the idea of Jon Jones just waiting out, Stipe until Stipe hits his 40s and hasn't fought since he was knocked out hard by Francis Ngannou. I don't like that idea at all. I think that's stupid. I think at that point, we're just kind of padding the record out to like really talk about, oh, isn't he the greatest? Like as we push aside all his drug abuse and issues like that. You know, I mean, it isn't fair, I think, to do that fight. It isn't fair to Pavlovich, all that noise. But when has being fair ever stopped the UFC and their promotion and, you know, propaganda for what they want us to believe? You know what I mean? Like Jon Jones is totally the greatest. George, no, he's not. He's not the greatest. It was Kamaru Usman, of course. You know, what are they saying now? Like Adesanya is the greatest middleweight ever. It's like, okay, you know, Khabib's the best lightweight ever. Okay, you know. But for Blaydes, I really don't know what you could do. This guy's super talented. He's a really talented fighter, but he has lost 3 number 1 contender bouts by stoppage now. So it's this one. I think Derek Lewis, if he won that one, they were going to give him a title shot. And I think the second Francis one was a number 1 contender shot as well on the line for him. So what do? I guess you just kind of keep him as this like premier gatekeeper. I guess, you know, like if you beat him, you're in the title mix, you know, like right there, you know, like maybe a win or favorable booking into a title. I think that's kind of where you put him and make him that like gatekeeper for like the top 3 or so guys.
We don't talk about Bruno, no. We don't talk about Bruno.
But next up, for the co-main event, it was supposed to be Song Yadong and Ricky Simone, but, you know, with the Moicano and Arman Tsarukyan kind of fight falling out. But we have Bruno Silva and Brad Tavares. So middleweight collision, perpetual boy Brad Tavares and Bruno Silva, who had a solid streak going on, but he lost a decision to Alex Pereira and he submission to Gerald Meerschaert, I should say. Brad Tavares, he's been around forever, you know. He seems like he's constantly losing to like guys who are going to break into the rankings. And then he'll go back to decisioning guys. He's like that, you know, gatekeeping guys getting ranked, it feels like to me. So out the jump, quick action. Tavares stings Bruno Silva pretty early. Seems like he's going to hurt him and he's going in for the finish. Silva just clobbers him on the way in. And now the momentum's back this way. It's a kind of a roller coaster. And Silva does drop him hard, gets a TKO finish in round 1. It's pretty impressive, I thought. You know, he snapped a 2-fight losing streak, like I said earlier. But it's good competition, I think he lost to. I think he has a pretty decent upside. You know, G3's really crafty. Like, he's crafty enough that he can beat anybody, I think, outside of the top 10. I think he's just like that crafty vet that, like, if you're not on your A game, he can put you out. You know, he can hit you with, like, these slow power punches, or worse, you're on the ground and he's on top, and he just chokes you out. You know, he's got some pretty crafty little skills to him, I think. And, of course, Alex Pereira was middleweight champion, technically. So, you know, I mean, hey. Good stuff. I think Silva has some upside, you know. Definitely, you know, maybe not necessarily like, oh, you got to keep an eye on this guy forever. He's going to be the man in like 5 years. Not like that, but, you know, I mean, hey, he's fun. He's entertaining. Has good finishes. Then we had Bobby Green and Jared Gordon at lightweight. I was actually kind of interested in this fight because I wanted to see some insight into like the ramifications of that Paddy Pimblett robbery that took place when Jared Gordon just got robbed in front of, you know, thousands of people. It was horrible. It was a horrible thing that happened to that man. So in the first round, it only went 1 round. Spoilers. But some back and forth striking, a low blow by Gordon. But, you know, Bobby Green walks it off. And then after a while, you know, Gordon couldn't get a takedown at one point. And then after a while, though, Gordon gets stunned by and just put out by a right hand. He just clobbered. And then you see what actually happened on the replay. I didn't notice it when I was watching. And Bobby Green landed an inadvertent headbutt, a head collision, and it stunned Gordon and allowed him to get the finish. So the ref, you know, seeing the replay goes, oh, no contest. You know, Chris Curtis was really upset, like, oh, now we care about headbutts, you know, with the whole Kelvin Gastelum thing. But, you know, I mean, yeah, it was pretty blatant. It was, you know, it was incidental. It wasn't quite like Henry Cejudo levels of ducking the head and ramming it, because Cejudo headbutts in every fight he's in. It's hilarious. I don't know how you don't call it, but I mean, he has that. He's found that gray area, Henry Cejudo. If he ducks his head and he's stepping in, it's not his fault that us as, you know, his opponents kind of come in and we get hit by a 50-pound head. That's a lethal weapon in his hands. Anyways, no more Cejudo head talks. I did a video on Cejudo this week, so I'm thinking about Cejudo. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed for this fight. We get a no contest. I really wanted to see what's going on after a guy gets robbed. I always want to see what happens. Like fighter A won a decision, but fighter B really won the fight. I'm always really curious to see what happens. Does fighter A go on this losing streak because of all the people going, you robbed that guy, what's going on? You and the judges in cahoots? Does that mess with their head? Fighter B, do they spark up and rise? And I've seen it all over the place in history. There's been a lot of robberies in MMA, let's be honest. There's 50, if not hundreds a year. And so I'm always really interested. I always try to keep track of stuff like that, especially in a big marquee one like that one. But such is the fight game, Can't have everything. I try to have everything, and it never works out for me. But for the rest of the card, Yasmin Lucindo beat up Brogan Walker on the feet for 3 rounds, and last round she just kind of pulled away. Jeremiah Wells and Matthew Semmelsberger put on a pretty good fight, with Wells getting the decision. I thought the first round was pretty good. Real back and forth. I saw people on Twitter going you could say it's a 10-10, and I'm yeah, I want to see more 10-10s in MMA, especially if you don't know who's winning, 10-10, Christos Giagos got a 95-second TKO of Rick Glenn. Just came out guns blazing. It was super sweet seeing that kind of aggression. Just let's go. It was pretty awesome. And finally, Montel Jackson, it was the first person, and I think it was 7 years. 7 years, I think, the first person to finish him in that amount of time against Ronnie Yaya. And, Ronnie Yaya, someone induct that boy into a stable now. The boy stable material #1 guy. Ronnie Yaya is the guy. He's been around forever, fought so many people, and he has a super slick jiu-jitsu game he's that undercard gatekeeper. If you can get a win over him, your main card material on a fight night, at least, he's the undercard slayer, I swear. But he's awesome. Ronnie Yaya is awesome. But he did get TKO'd in the first round by Montel Jackson. All right, well, that's it for me. I will be here next week to cover the said Song Yudong Ricky Simone fight. Ricky Simone's one of my boys. Gotta go represent. And keep an eye out for the preview show for UFC 288, I believe it is. I always get my numbers mixed up. Which I think we'll be shooting next Saturday, if my dates are correct. Should have definitely wrote down dates and times and stuff like that better. But if you want to see more of me, then you can always go to the main channel and check out a playlist for the Retro Review series. It's my favorite thing I work on. I love working on the Retro Review series. It's my pride and joy, my baby, I've heard people say that it's definitely our baby in the idea of Dana White and slap fighting, and I don't know if I like that comparison, but yeah, it's pretty close, I suppose. But it is definitely my favorite thing to do, and it doesn't cause unwanted brain damage like slap fighting does. So if you haven't seen any of those, go check them out. I highly recommend them. I'm Joe with the INC. Thank you for watching.